Welcome to the Mandala Podcast, where we help you feel your best body, mind, and soul. Hi there, this is Charlie McDermott, co-host of the show, but you're not here for me. Admit it. We're here for Bree Jaworski. Bree, how you
I'm
doing?
great, Charlie. Thanks so much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing terrific. I'm really excited. One, congratulations. I know with all you have going on, probably the last thing you have time for is a podcast, but you also get, and I know you're all about helping folks. And, this is such an awesome platform to help folks, whether they're in Southwest Florida or anywhere on the globe. So, yeah, congratulations for finding the time and putting the effort in here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I have a lot to say. So,
Yeah, yeah, and rightly so. You spent years and years, uh, becoming that expert and really understanding how to help people. And as I said when we first met, this is a message that needs to get out there, and so let's get into it. I always like to start in the first episode, Bree, with the just the background. I mean, let's start familiarize yourself. Boy, I'm going to stay away from those multi-syllable words from this point forward. But share with our listeners, because I know a lot of them already know you and are familiar with you, but not everyone. Let them know your background, and let's talk about your company as well at the same time. So
sure.
take it away.
Yeah. So I have been a mental health counselor of some sort for 12 years now. And yeah, so I'm doing now board certified health coaching as well. And I'm also a PhD and doctorate student in integrative medicine. And so my background professionally, I've done a lot of work with trauma victims, a lot with children's families, all sorts, kind of all over the board as far as mental health. And now that I'm in private practice, we see a little bit of everybody. And so my business, Mandala Counseling, provides mental health counseling. And then also my health coaching business. And we provide all
Mm.
sorts of really cool things that I think a lot of people don't know about, including like biowell assessments where we can assess your energy field and see where there are, reserves or possible depletions in your energy. And, everything correlates to different organ or, system in our body. So if you're not feeling great physically, sometimes we can figure out what's going on. And the other thing we're doing in my health coaching business is hair tissue mineral analysis. So we take a tissue of hair and we analyze the tissue to see what's going on inside your body as far as depletions and minerals and things. Because as we know, our comparatively speaking to what our grandparents had, our soil in this country is not the same as it was. Therefore, our fruits and vegetables and produce that we buy is not the same that it was. And so a lot of people have depletions that they don't even know about. So kind of just getting to the root cause of why you may or may not be feeling great and just helping people to feel a lot better. And there are a lot of correlations between mental health and physical health and kind of tying all
Mm.
of those things together and helping people to feel really, really great. And so that's what we're all about nowadays. So it's a little bit about me, a little bit about my business.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. As you know, I come from the background of health club
Yeah.
owners, Barb and myself. It was back then. It was all about the physical, including nutrition,
Hmm.
and certainly that you know, took us and our members and really our society to a certain point. And, what we found through personal experience, through disease of a loved one, through a trauma, and a lot of study and finding the right folks is that there's a lot more to it than just the physical side.
Yeah.
And I love, again, and this is why I encourage you to get out there with this podcast, because you bring those two worlds together. You can't separate the two.
No.
And especially, I call it what's between the ears. What's going on in our heads drives everything. And it drives how we sleep, if we sleep at night,
Yes.
even, which is a whole ripple effect if we aren't sleeping soundly, right? Including health challenges that can come from that. So, wow.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Might do a whole episode just on sleep problems and insomnia because I
Yeah.
know personally I've dealt with a lot of issues with sleeping myself. And, there's, I at one point had tried everything under the sun, and, just finding out that my body was actually just really deficient in certain minerals. And just supplementing those either through diet or through supplementation, just getting those things straightened out has helped immensely. So sometimes it's something so small, it's just you don't know what you don't know, and traditional doctors a lot of times are not doing those type of tests to see, what's going on. They're just, prescribing Ambien or whatever, and calling it a
Yes.
day, which that works
Yes.
for sure. But you're not going to be, if you run out of your medication, you're kind of screwed as far as not being able to sleep. And if you figure out what the problem is, then you can just sleep on your own, which is much better.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's called, instead of putting a Band-Aid on it, let's find the core issue, right?
Yeah,
And address that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And avoid all those side effects that you have from medications and being dependent upon that.
Yeah,
So,
that's the thing. It becomes kind of a ripple effect, and, you have to take a medication for the medication side effects and so on and so
yeah.
forth. And, as
Yeah.
far as just being healthy, a lot of times it's a lot easier than we even think. We just have to figure out what's going on. So I'm all about kind of getting to the root cause of what's going on and figuring it out from that standpoint rather than, like you said, putting a band aid on things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that word healthy. Oh my goodness. How many different definitions do you think there are of the word healthy? Everybody has their own interpretation of it. And that's great. But what happens if your interpretation doesn't work, right? And then we it's that guilt thing, whether it's something as simple as a weight loss thing, or more importantly, you touched on energy and things that probably most of us don't think about. We, especially as we age, we just think, well, I have less energy. Well, that's just what happens when we get older. Heck no.
Right.
I have more energy today than I probably had 30 years ago, because some of the changes that I've made that you're going to address in future episodes.
Yes.
And you know what I equated as, if you're always sick, and not throwing up, deathly ill or anything, but just simply if you always feel like
Mhm.
lethargic and you don't have the energy, you just think that's normal.
Yes.
And when what you help your clients do is understand that there's a whole nother part of life that you can tap into. And so the energy part of that is so important.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Like, we're made to believe that, feeling lethargic, feeling crappy as you get older is normal. This is normal. After you have a kid, this is normal. These things are normal. Like, they're not okay and they're not normal. And
Yeah.
talking about those things and realizing just because a lot of people are experiencing something doesn't make it normal. And, you
Yeah.
know, we really could get a lot of people feeling a lot better and make that the new normal. And that's much more of my goal.
I love that. Yeah, let's shift the tide here.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. So you're doing this podcast for, I mean, what's your why? I mean, ultimately, what do you want to accomplish with this podcast?
Yeah, I think just the world that we live in is kind of setting us up to be unwell mentally and physically sick. And,
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that. I have a lot of knowledge that I've acquired over the years, and I'm still acquiring on how to help people to feel really good. And, like I said, make that the new normal. And I just want to share the information that I have. I want to share the information that I continue to acquire. I'm constantly learning. And I want to have just some deep and difficult sometimes conversations and discussions about how to get to the root of why people don't feel well, both mentally and physically. So that's kind of my
Right.
why, is to change the narrative of, you know, this is just what happens when you get older, or when you have a baby, or when, this and that. Like, no, like, we really deserve to feel better. And I think most of us don't even know how good we are capable of feeling, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
So we want to change that.
Love it. Love it. As you're talking, and I don't watch Friends at all. I even when it was on in the 90s. But I know a lot of people can identify with that show and cut me off. There's an eject button here, Bree. By the way, if I go off on a tangent here, but as we're talking through this, I was yesterday. I wanted to record a show with my DVR, and when you turn the TV on, there's just whatever's playing is playing, and it was a Friends episode, and I'm listening as I'm
Mhm.
fixing up the recording thing, and it's Courtney Cox, I guess, her
Mhm.
character, and she comes into the other guy's apartment all jazz, just full of energy and ready to go for a run. And of course, he has no interest in running. He's probably, never even walked fast in his life, let alone
Right.
run, right?
Right.
And so you hear him begin to have a conversation with her and says, "Wow, I'm surprised you have so much energy because you just lost your job, and you can't talk to your parents about it because they'd be so disappointed in you." And you see her just kind of her whole demeanor just kind of shrink,
Yeah.
and all he's trying to do is get out of going out for a run with her.
Right. But
And by the end of the conversation, she is so depressed that
yes.
that she ends up taking a nap in his apartment, and he gets out of going out for a
Yeah.
run.
So mission accomplished for him. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is mental. I had a really great conversation with one of my clients who I think he just turned 18, but I've been seeing him for a while and I've seen kind of his evolution. And I remember when I first started seeing him, I would call him like my little Buddha client because not that he's chubby or anything like that, but he's just
Yeah,
wise. Like he's very wise for his
yeah,
age.
yeah.
And he's going through something and we talked about just the power of words and like the power of more specifically the words that we say to ourselves because I think a lot of times people are much more derogatory and harsh to themselves than they ever would be to someone else. And so I was just,
That's good.
like hyping, telling him to hype himself up, but hyping him up at the same time and just telling him, like, I know it sounds silly, but like, literally look in the mirror. Like, when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed, like, look in the mirror and tell yourself all the things that you love about yourself. And if you have a hard time doing that, let's start there, like make a list of these things. And
Mm,
I know it's going to feel forced and it's going to feel awkward and it's going to feel weird, but like just keep hyping yourself up and talk to yourself like you love yourself because like words do have a lot of power and it feels. And he texted me the other day and he said, "Breathe, like when you told me that I thought it was ridiculous." I mean, he's an 18-year-old boy, he's like, "I thought it was ridiculous." He's like, "But I've actually been doing it and I actually feel better." So like
yeah,
the proof is in the pudding. And that's a great example that you gave about just like words
yeah.
having power to either inflate you or deflate
Yes,
you in that example.
yes.
So
It's like that nursery rhyme that we grew up on was so wrong. What, "Sticks and stones may break our bones, but words can never, harm us," like, "Oh, yes, they
yes, they
can."
can. And
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
as far as, you know, working with clients who have been physically abused versus emotionally abused, I can tell you 100% of the time that bruises heal. But a lot
yeah,
of times, the
yeah,
emotional stuff that people go through, they hold on to for a lifetime, some of them, unfortunately. And they
yeah,
hear that voice of that person with, those exact words that were said to them decades later, whereas they've long forgotten about any physical pain that may have been inflicted, which is, all abuse is terrible. But as far as longevity, like, the words that you hear and the words that we say to ourselves like really do have an impact. So definitely be kind
yeah,
and be careful. Just as a general, statement, be careful with the words that you say. And I tell people a lot about this when they're speaking to their partner in particular, because those words, they you may say them in anger and you may not even really
mm,
mean them, but they will remember them. You might not remember them because you just said it out of an emotional response, but they'll remember
yeah,
them. And so be very thoughtful in the words that you choose to say to people, because
mm,
they definitely have a lot of power for sure.
yeah. Wow, great stuff, Bria. This is gonna be fun. Man, oh man, I'm looking forward to just selfishly, personally, because this is gonna help me.
Well, hopefully,
This is
hopefully it helps a lot of people.
you might wanna charge me for, like, one-on-one counseling here. So,
You'll get to hear
but
the inner
kind of
ramblings of my brain. Yeah, for sure.
Uh, so kind of on that same path. Let's look to the future, future episodes.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? What do you have in mind?
So I have a lot of idea. I'm very much an idea person. My husband makes fun of me about this a lot. Like, he's kidding, but like I am an idea person. I'm like, I have an idea about this, a million ideas. So some of the ideas that I have, I definitely want to have some guest speakers, and specifically, I want to include some of the wonderful therapists that work for me. I would love to get them
Mm,
on to do some, specifically oriented topics that they're really experts on. So I want to have them
yeah.
on. I'd like to do some shows about parenting, different issues that I think a lot of parents are dealing with nowadays, including parenting a child that may be on the autism spectrum, parenting a child that is dealing with gender issues, um, also just how your physical and mental health are linked, adult
Mm,
ADHD, vaccines. I know that's kind of a hot topic, but one that I want to talk about on here. Living with somebody that has mental health issues. And we talk a lot about you having them personally, but like we have Al Anon for people that
yeah.
have alcoholics in their life. So I'd like to,
Yeah.
provide some support to people that may have someone close to them who's dealing with mental health issues, but may not be dealing with them themselves.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk about gardening, homesteading, as it relates to health, like growing your own food,
Yeah.
how to make things that are, herbal remedies and things like that. I want to talk about tips on ways to decrease your anxiety levels, decrease your depression, mineral deficiencies and how that might be affecting your mental health, obviously physical health, but also mental
Wow.
health, and
Yeah.
just kind of how to stay sane in this increasingly crazy world that we live in. So yeah, those are off the top of my head. Those are kind of some of the topics I have off
Off
my.
the top of your
Yeah.
head. Wow. You
My mom jokes with me that my brain is on fire, and that is kind of
Yeah.
the best way that you can describe it. So yeah, I have a
Yeah.
lot of ideas for things. So this is
Oh, this is
in my
great.
mind
So now we're gonna be
lab.
able to record that
Yeah.
dream and, you know, let everyone else benefit besides your husband
Yes, he's probably
from this
like,
moving
"Thank
forward.
goodness somebody else is gonna listen to your crazy ramblings." Yeah.
Uh, well, Bree, this has been terrific. Really, as I said, I'm going to say it a few times over and over again in future episodes. Really looking forward to the next episode. And
Cool.
until then, be well and keep doing what you're
Thank you
doing.
so much, Charlie. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Mandala Podcast. To learn more about Mandala Counseling and Health Coaching, go to www.mandala-counseling.com. That's www.mandala, counseling, counseling.com, or call 239-360-1983, or visit us on Facebook or Instagram.